So, yes, welcome everyone. Today we have the wonderful Rhonda Henderson, and we will be starting with the parent testimony training. So, Rhonda Henderson is a social impact leader and creator entrepreneur with 20 years of experience at the intersection of education, arts, and communication. Henderson began her career teaching high school history, motivated by a desire to cultivate civic aware young people in her hometown, Washington, D.C., later serving in leadership roles in the education community. In 2019, she co founded the DAP Project, a multimedia platform amplifying Black community narratives, and serves as the Chief Program Officer. She is also the founder of 627 Strategies, a public speaking coaching firm that equips mission driven leaders with the skills to leverage personal storytelling to drive narrative change. Henderson holds a BA, a bachelor's in urban studies from Columbia University, and a master's of education in teaching and learning from Harvard University Graduate School of Education, and an MBA from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. She is the board member of Black Swan Academy, the Literacy Lab, and Theater Alliance. So, well, everyone, welcome, Rhonda. Take it away, please. Oh, Chioma, did you want to?
Yeah, sorry, let me just do a quick introductory message here, similar to what I did Tuesday. I'll share slides. Be very, very quick. I also want to say that Rhonda is a graduate of Benjamin Banneker Academic High School, where I went as well. So she is truly DC's own. And let me share this. Okay, can you guys see this?
We can.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know how to make this, well, it's just gonna, hopefully you see it well enough for me to just use it as a prop here and guiding to kind of go through these little bits. So just a little bit about AJE again, if we have new participants, just so you know. AJE was founded in 1996 by two law students, one of whom's a fourth generation Washingtonian. Our purpose here is to educate and empower parents to be effective advocates on behalf of their children. And we are expanding that mission to include youth advocacy. So we'll be rolling that out very soon to have our youth advisors. So if you have young people, teenagers in your home that you may want their leadership developed, please send them our way. And as part of that, we believe that the approach to injustice of denial of special education, which was the first issue that AJE took on, should help in closing gaps in disparities, particularly to families residing in wards 8, 7, and 6. Today, we are the federally designated Parent Training and Information Center and the Family to Family Health Information Center. And both are governed by respective federal agencies, Department of Education and Department of Health and Human Services. And our strategy is multi-pronged. We have direct services that includes both our family services, which is our peer support, family support specialists that, we do intakes, and then we kind of filter families in two categories: those who will get direct support, which is the majority of people from our family support specialists. And then the most acute cases, some will get referred to our legal services. And those are direct services. We also offer trainings, including professional development trainings, but trainings for our parents, trainings for youth advocates, or anyone that wants to master special education. And of course, training with professionals who are supporting families in healthcare and education and in other arenas. And our Health Justice Project, which is what we're here doing today, is part of our systemic advocacy work. And so we also have an education advocacy project, and that's going to be rolling out pretty soon. So very excited about the future. The Health Justice Project launched in 2021. It started as a 5-year project. It's going to continue beyond 5 years as we decided that fairly early in the project, but we started with funding from Robert Wood Johnson and have since become a Title V grantee for DC Department of Health. And we continue to grow and expand the program. And it starts with wards 8, wards 7, wards 5, and wards 1, where we feel we have the highest concentration of Black and Brown families. And then we expand it to include ward 4 in 2023. And so we're very happy how things are going. Everyone here is here because of this health justice project, that is a parent ambassador, that's even a staff member. So we're proud. So today's agenda, to not belabor, we have some great things in store here. And I think that Danny did a great job at doing the introduction, so I'm not going to do that too much, but just what the day is going to look like, which is what we're doing now, welcoming. We'll have our first workshop, Rhonda, and then take a little break, very brief break, like 5 minutes. And then we'll do our second workshop, which is caring for the caregiver. And then hopefully you guys fill out the evaluations. We'll put the links in the chat and hope you fill that out. So I do want to note that our next camp session is tomorrow, and it's going to be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It is our Community Health Advisory Panel. It is a special meeting for our Community Health Advisory Panel, which meets bi-monthly on a regular basis. This meeting is the first one. We're going to be incorporating our parent ambassadors who, heads up ambassadors, you are the new leaders. So you're the new leaders of the Community Health Advisory Panel, which has a lot of our professionals in attendance. And so we hope that you're there bright and early, right on time. We have another dynamic agenda here. We're going to be unpacking disability accessibility. So we have somebody from the Mayor's Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and someone from the Department on Disability Services. And then we have from ER to early intervention, we have somebody from Children's National, and we have 2 dynamic veteran parent leaders, Gail Avent and Mama Joe, who we all know, Janice Patterson. If you don't know, you will know Mama Joe. And so please be there on time early. And this is a feedback. We're going to post them in the chat. It's just a QR code if you just want to hold on to it for right now. And I'm done. And I'm going to pass it over to Rhonda. Stop sharing my screen. And all right, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. I bet Mama Joe tells a great story. And through our time together, that's what we are going to practice. Okay, let me make sure that, okay, great. So as Chima said, I did graduate from the Benjamin Banneker Academic High School, that I consider to be the foundation of everything that I've been able to do. And we can talk about that later, but yes. So we're going to talk about stories, and some people may think of stories as magical, that you might just have a gift for it. And some people certainly are talented at telling stories. What we're going to do today is to share skills to elevate your storytelling skills. And if you haven't tapped into your inner storyteller, then I hope that this workshop will move you from being perhaps a little reluctant about storytelling to being really enthusiastic, or at least more confident about storytelling. So in addition to going to Banneker, some people are surprised to know that I'm actually one of 10 children. Yes, my parents raised 10 children in 2 batches. So we have a blended family of 10 people. And in 2023, I stood in front of a group of people and told a story about how I went to junior high school so excited to wear cute clothes, to ride the bus. I really wanted to be independent and start a new friend group, as people do when they start junior high school, only to have a very rude awakening on the bus in the form of the cute guy having his fingers pinched on the back of my pants, ready to send my pants straight down to my ankles. So that was one of the first stories that I told in public, but I've told many stories as a teacher and as an education advocate. My niece is one of the favorite people that I love to tell stories with and about. She's one of my multiple nieces. And my favorite story that I read this year is James, and many people have read that story and enjoyed it. The first thing that's really important to understand before you begin to tell your story or before you even open your mouth is your mindset. So we're going to help establish a positive, confident mindset throughout our time. Because when you tell a story, you are often more impactful than reciting data. And when you know the elements of a compelling story, then you have a better chance at telling one that resonates, that connects, and that causes people to care about what you're talking about. We're going to practice that craft. So when we get to the craft section, we're actually going to practice. It's not just me talking. And we're going to share as well. If time permits, we might do some breakout groups or we'll stay in the large group. If we stay in the large group, it will require us to come off mute and be open and maybe take some risks with sharing what we've written down. And then we'll wrap up with ways that you can call others to action and synthesize your story. So with that, let's get in the mindset that we are compelling, magical storytellers who practice the craft of storytelling. Is that a healthy mindset that we can adapt? If that's not the right dialogue for you, if you are addressing or facing a different challenge, maybe you're naturally shy, maybe you don't like the way your voice sounds, then tell yourself that your voice sounds melodious and people love to hear it and your voice is captivating because your inner dialogue is what will come out of your mouth. And everybody can adjust your mindset because that's free. Everybody can do that. And you are totally in control of what you think. So that's the first thing that we have to establish when we begin the process of storytelling. Are we good? I'm pretending that you're saying yes, that we're good. Wrong direction. Okay. So why is storytelling a great tool for advocacy? Some folks might think, well, we really need to get to the data to really quantify the problem. Right. But what our brain does is our brain makes meaning through stories. Our brains naturally want to understand the connection between events, and data doesn't necessarily do that by itself. We need words and images and a plot. So stories can simplify really complex issues. They can also cause people to care because you're demonstrating how you care, and they can establish a connection. In the brief story that I told you about that memorable ride on the bus, maybe you feel a little more connected because you also may have had a memorable bus ride in junior high school. Maybe you've had the experience of wanting to look cute in junior high and establish independence. So when you share a little bit about you, that establishes a connection. Now, strategic storytelling, on the other hand, has a purpose. So if I'm testifying about mental health, I might not tell that story because it didn't have that much of an impact on my mental health. Yes, it was surprising, but it didn't, send me over the edge in any way. So your storytelling that is strategic has a purpose. So the stories that I hope we're going to talk about this evening will be stories that are related to the advocacy that you want to do. So you will have a purpose to the storytelling that you do. Now, I said that storytelling includes a craft. Who recognizes the pictures on the screen? What is this? Are these pictures from? What movie are these pictures from? You can come on.
Wakanda.
Yes, it's Wakanda. Great. Generally, what happens in Black Panther?
It's an origin story of how King T'Challa was attempting to fulfill his destiny by being a king, but he had an obstacle in the form of an unexpected adversary.
Yes. Keep
So
going. There's more. I love that. That is such a wonderful beginning. So he had the obstacles in the form of an unexpected adversary. And then what?
and then and then he had to go through a series of tests and challenges. And although he tried to succeed on his own, he realizes that he had to draw upon inner strength um, and not just physically defeat his opponent, but also unite his family and his community behind him.
And then what happened? You're so close. And then what happened? By the end of it all, then what happened?
He changed. He changes. He changes, and he went and he succeeds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's amazing. And what's also amazing about that is the language that you use to describe that story and that plot line. So thank you so much. I can't see exactly what your name was. What was your name? Who was just speaking?
I'm sorry, Renee. Renee Hayes.
Renee. Yes.
Hi.
Snaps for Renee. So Renee basically outlined the elements of a story. And this is really important for us to understand. An inciting incident. The inciting incident is like the jump off. It's what catalyzes the story. It's the beginning of the journey. And then another element is what you want in the story. So here, T'Challa wants to fulfill his destiny as king of Wakanda. He wants peace in Wakanda. The obstacles are Killmonger and Claw. What's at stake is the throne. He persists through the battles multiple times by uniting the family and bringing the army. And then his final resolution is he's standing in front of the United Nations declaring that Wakanda is not going to distribute the vibranium because it's too destructive, and instead it wants to call for peace. Now, I hope that this story, one, got you excited, and that you also see that these elements can apply to you and your story. There is an element of an inciting incident that got you started. There is something that you want. There are obstacles in your way. There is something that is at stake. And when we say at stake, we mean if this thing doesn't happen, something bad will happen. If T'Challa cannot maintain control of the throne, then world peace is at stake. We might explode into war. We won't talk about present circumstances. And then he persists and fights through the obstacles, and then is able to call to action peace in the world. How can that then look in our environment of advocacy? So here's an example that I use in the education space. And instead of saying just the inciting incident, so boom, that's often how we start our stories, right? So here's an example in the education space. You realize your child is struggling with reading comprehension. So that realization sets you off on your journey. What do you want? What you want is your child to be able to read well and to love to read. What happens if they aren't able to read well? Well, their overall well being may be compromised. They may not have as much access to one, reading content and to the world generally. So we have an inciting incident, we have what you want, and why does it matter, or what's at stake. Let's practice just these 3 steps. And here's how I'd like us to practice. I dropped in the chat a link to a notes sheet. And I think we're able to get it again. It is a document, a Google document. And it should be available to everyone.
I'm going to drop it in the chat one more time.
Okay, great. Here it is. Okay, awesome. Now what I'd like you to do, jump in the document, make a copy of the document so that you can write in it yourself. And to make a copy, just click File and make a copy so that you can have your own version.
That's weird. Rhonda, I'm trying to click make a copy, but it's not letting me. Is anyone else having that issue? Also, if you may not be in
Yeah,
front
I
of a
think I might need to. I was having a similar issue.
Mhm.
I
I'm-
was able to make a copy, so I'm not sure why.
Okay, now I can. So
Okay,
if you
perfect.
don't have a computer with you in front of you,
then
maybe
can-
follow along with paper.
Yes, follow along with paper, and I will also drop the prompts in the chat as well.
I can do that for you, Rhonda.
Okay, perfect. So let's set a timer for just 2 minutes. And I'm setting it just for 2 minutes so that you can just write what immediately comes to mind. And the story that you are drawing upon is your advocacy story. So if you are, if you have advocated for your child, or if you have faced an incident, a challenge, an obstacle, a situation as a parent with your child that you want to see changed or different, then this is the story that you would begin to outline. Okay, let's set the timer and get started. And when the time is up, we'll come back and we'll take some volunteers to share.
And Rhonda, quick question. This element of your story, is it a personal one, or what would you do? What would you do in the scenario that you just presented?
Oh, the one about the you realize your child is struggling to read.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there are several things we could do, and I do get to that part. That's the journey part.
Right,
Are
but
you?
people answering the
Mhm.
questions in this document right now is them sharing one story of themselves, right?
Yes, one story.
Okay.
Yep, one personal story that they have experienced, and it can be as a parent in relation to getting the supports that they need for their child. Um, it could also be, something that they have experienced personally, but ideally, you're speaking about an issue for which you want to advocate. Okay, that's our time for writing. And how do we feel about getting started? Was everybody able to begin to at least get the inciting incident and what they want um, identified?
And you could feel free to come off mute as well.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Come on off mute. And can I have someone share their inciting incident? What happened that started the journey? Amy.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to be honest. I am driving, so I can't write anything.
I
But
will be your note taker.
I have a lot of stories, and these are actually not, unfortunately, not stories for me. This actually happened. But one incident in particular, it does pertain my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter does suffer from mental illness and multiple learning disabilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, my incident was with her doctor and law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So, upon going to her appointment, and there were discussions that happened leading up to the appointment where we were trying to get my daughter back to going, coming outside and going back to school and, reattaching herself back to society. So the psychiatry appointment, that's what that was. And it was, today's the day you're going back to school. And my daughter, I know how she processes things. If she's not going to do something, she'll just say, mm-hmm. And I know that means I'm not doing it. I don't care what you say. But we rolled with it. When it was time for us to leave the appointment, I was supposed to have been taking her to get lunch and going to school. This is doctored ordered, mind you. So, live maybe 10 minutes from the school. I mean, from the doctor's office, and she knows the way home, of course. As soon as I deviated from, the path of home, that's where she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Adanye, the doctor said that you have to go to school. We're gonna go grab food. We're gonna get." And she said, "I didn't never say that I never agreed to that." And then she just started, going off in the car. I was by myself with her, and she jumped out the car.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow, Amy. Okay, Amy, I want to pause for a second because you just articulated the three things that we wanted to master here. So thank you for that example. And I want to repeat back to make sure that we understand. Okay, so the inciting incident. So boom, we're at my daughter's psychiatry appointment. What do we want to? We want to get clearance to go back to school. We also want to get lunch. And we started on the journey, and the obstacles to getting to what you want, my daughter didn't want to go back to school. So those are some of the beginning elements of your story. How did the story start? Meaning the inciting incident. And the incident is really specific. You drop your listener into the moment. Tell us where you were, what you were wearing, what time of day it was. So boom, we're in the car going to the psychiatry appointment, or we're at the psychiatry appointment, and we want to get clearance to go back to school. We also want to get some lunch, and then that's when the journey starts.
Yeah.
With that, let's take a moment now to talk about, in the interest of time, let's move on to talking about this journey. And because here is another really critical part to understand about storytelling is the journey. Now, your journey includes obstacles. Things have to go wrong. Otherwise, it's just kind of like retelling, and you're advocating for something, which means you are seeking a new world or different circumstances. So that means that the present circumstances are not working for you. So what are the obstacles that you face? And then how do you persist through those obstacles? What are some of the things that you do to try to overcome those obstacles? And then what is the resolution? So in this example where I'm talking about young people or my fictional child not reading at grade level, what are the obstacles to my child being in a situation where they are receiving high quality literacy instruction? It could be influence over school budgets that make it difficult to buy new curriculum. So there could be people who don't really have my child's interests at heart. They want to spend the budget one way, I want to spend it a different way, and they are my obstacle. How do I persist over that? Well, one way might be to build coalition with other parents to influence the way that those dollars are spent. It could be through meetings, letter writing campaigns. There are multiple ways, and obviously AJE is an expert in that area. And the fictional resolution to that is the Board of Education can organize a committee to review the literacy curriculum. So that is a fictional example, but these are the 3 elements that you want to add to your story. What are the obstacles? How do you persist through those obstacles? And then the resolution to your story. Do we have questions about that before we go into practice? Okay, for this example, we're actually going to break into, are we
Rhonda,
able to
could
break
I?
into groups? Mhm.
Yes, we can. I'm
Okay,
just going to, if it's okay with you, we just have a couple of poll questions to see where everyone's at and get a gauge of the room, if that's okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right, you all. So just like Tuesday, and if you weren't here on Tuesday, I'm going to go ahead and just share some poll questions with you. Just give me a second. Okay. So the first one is, have you ever given a public testimony or shared your story at a public meeting or hearing? We have 2 people that said yes, and I felt heard. 2 people shared no, but I want to. Okay. All right, so we're split between yes, I have yes, and I felt heard, no, but I don't want to, and one person said no, and I'm not sure if I ever will, and that's okay. Um, it's all about your comfortability level. Let's go to the next question. So the second question is, what is your biggest fear or barrier to sharing your story publicly? Oh, we have one person saying, I already feel confident. 2 people saying they already feel confident. One person saying the fear of judgment and backlash. Another person of not knowing what to say. And another person shared language or accessibility barriers. Yes, thank you, Ebony. We'll see what I can do since you're on your phone. Okay. All right, you all. We have 2 more. Thank you for sticking with me. The third question is, how confident do you feel in turning your story into a tool for advocacy after this workshop? I know we're about to jump into breakout rooms, so we're still in the middle of the workshop, but some people, 4 specifically, have said very confident, 2 are still unsure. Let's go ahead and jump into those breakout rooms and see how we feel after that. So, Rhonda, do you want to circulate breakout rooms?
Yeah, and let me make sure that I give some directions
You
about
did
what
that
we're
by
going to
yourself.
do in the breakout rooms.
You did it by
So
yourself?
these breakout rooms are focused on the journey questions in the note taking. And Ebony, I see that you can't do groups, so hang out here in the main room, and we'll be your group. So in your breakout groups, you're thinking through your own responses about the journey, and you're describing what's at stake, how did you persist, and if there was a resolution, what was the resolution? And for folks who have already delivered testimony, did you offer a call to action? And let me get that out of there. Did you offer a call to action, and what happened there? So those are our directions for our groups. Let's take about, we're at 6:46. So we'll just take about 5 minutes in our groups, and then we will come back. Oh, and offer feedback as well. When you share out, offer feedback so people can understand if it's compelling or if there are ways that you can improve.
So can we just get one more quick recap just as I open up the breakout rooms? Anyone who needs further clarification?
Yeah, sure. So we're looking at our note sheet and we're focusing on the journey. So we've already talked about the inciting incident, what the problem was, and now we are on our journey to resolve this problem. So you're talking about what's at stake. What happens if you don't get this resolved? What happens if Amy isn't able to get her daughter to go back to school? How did you persist? And if there was a resolution, then what was the resolution?
All right, you all. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms. And Chioma, I'm going to try to see if I can put Ebony in. Sometimes you can assign and it won't kick her out, but since she's on her phone, it's a little bit more difficult. Let me try Ebony. You all, if you're on your phone, there is a tab at the button that says breakout room. Click on that and it will take you to your room. Okay, in room 1, I have 1 person. In room 2, I have 4 people. And in room 3, I have 3 people. Let me see if I can move this person. Yes. Okay. I'm going to join room 2. Rhonda, are you able to see breakout rooms or no?
Let's see, how would I be able to see?
I don't think so. I'm just going to stay here because I have other panelists coming, but if you want to join some rooms, please do so, okay?
Okay, let's see.
Hi, Jenny, welcome.
Hello.
So we're just wrapping up the first panel. We have families in breakout rooms right now, and they should be coming back. Rhonda, do you want to give that like 5 minutes?
Yeah, we're down to 3 minutes.
Okay,
How can I
I'm
join
gonna broadcast.
other?
I can send you there's 2 rooms right now.
Okay, yeah, any
Let
room
me
that you
send
want.
you to one of them, and then in a little bit I'll send you to the other one. That's weird. I don't see you on here. Oh, right here.
Oh, Ebony is still here. Let's talk to Ebony. Ebony, can you come
Oh,
off
Renee
mute?
is here as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Yeah, we'll have a little group right
Maybe
here.
some people, yeah, hopped off.
Okay. Let's see, and Fari is here. Is it Fari or Farai?
No, sorry.
Fari, okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm not able to join the breakout room at this time.
No worries.
Okay, thank you. Give me just a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
1 minute left, Rhonda, so I can broadcast a message.
Okay, yeah, we have 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, good.
Mhm.
You know, the breakout rooms suddenly close and people are not sharing their story. Well,
Right.
not done sharing their story. So I want to make sure they have time.
Yes.
Then a heads up. Let me see, Rhonda, if I can move you into a breakout room. So you know what? It says that you're actually assigned to group 2.
Mhm.
So if you look on your screen, on the
Mhm.
toolbar at the bottom,
Mhm.
see if you can see the breakout room option. It should be 4 tiny squares. Hi, Carol, welcome. We're still in the middle of our first panel. We just have families in breakout rooms and they'll be coming back shortly in 1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for coming early, y'all. I do have your PowerPoint, so when we start, I can share it for you if you all want to share it. Let me make you co-host in the meantime. So
Can
that's
we
great.
share the version we have?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Perfect. And I can make you co-host shortly. That way you all can share your screen.
Okay.
Mhm. Ebony, did you have a story in the meantime? Or Renee? Come off mute if you can. Okay. Is it also messing? I see the comment about the phone storage. Is it also messing with your chat as well? All right, I'm going to bring everybody back. Okay.
I,
All
um,
right, everybody, welcome back. If I cut you off, I apologize.
oh, you couldn't, oh, never mind.
That's okay, Ami, because we're actually going to come right back to you. We're going to come back to you. Okay, let's get back to we'll get to knowing your audience in a moment. Okay, so I want to reiterate some of the points that are really important for us to focus on. So when you're telling your story, it's stories bring back so much emotion, right? And we put ourselves back in the moment. For the listener can take in small chunks of information at a time. And the more vivid the story that you're telling, the better it is for the listener to take in what you're describing. It helps that you use language like there were multiple obstacles that kept me from getting what I want, or many challenges surfaced as I was trying to get resources for my daughter. So when you're telling your story, particularly in front of policymakers or funders or other people that you want to get involved, help them to digest what you are telling them by using words like challenges, obstacles, here's what I had to face, this is what made it so difficult, and then give them 1, 2, or 3 things that made the journey difficult. So as you're telling your story, use some of those benchmarking words that help people to understand what the obstacles were, how many you faced, and then this is how I overcame. Or you might say it required tremendous persistence, or I had to demonstrate more courage than I ever had before. Ami and I were just talking about probably the most important element of storytelling, and that is describing how you changed throughout your journey. If you did not change, then you are not telling a story. And this is true for any story that you're telling. Otherwise, you're just repeating a sequence of events. Stories are about change over time. So, Ami, if I can go back to the conversation that you were having, I'll set it up for the group, and then you can pick it up by talking about change, and then we'll close out. So, Ami's situation is that he is caring for aging parents. He didn't realize how difficult it would be. He wanted them, I'm imagining, as someone who had an aging parent, he didn't understand exactly how challenging it would be until he got into it, and the experience really changed him. So, Ami, pick it up from there. What are some of the ways? Can you give us 2 ways that caring for your aging parent changed you?
Absolutely. So my name is Emil Hudson. I'm a parent organizer with Advocates for Justice and Education. And 2 ways that I was changed was it forced me to address damaging habits that I had um, that I couldn't have anymore. And it also made me give myself more grace at the same time. So it was kind of like a give and take.
Okay, I'm just jotting that down. Forced me to address damaging habits that I had, and forced you to
Give myself grace.
give yourself grace. And I think I was calling you by the wrong name, Emil. Okay, my
Yeah,
bad.
you don't, no worries.
Oh,
It's a
okay,
long,
great.
I got a long name.
Yeah, I thought someone had given you a nickname. That's what my mind heard. But Emil, okay, got it. Force you to give yourself grace. Okay, so I just want to reiterate that point because it's so crucial when you tell your story is how did you change as a result of persisting through those obstacles? Lastly, in an advocacy space, it's important to know your audience. And I'm going to share my screen here for these last couple of moments. In an advocacy environment, you're often going to use data and research to support your cause. And as you're choosing what data to incorporate, think about the audience that you're in front of. So we had some folks who are really comfortable testifying in front of the public and potentially in front of the city council. So when you're thinking about data that supports your call to action, you might think about what's the cost or the budget impact? How many people are affected? If they don't take action, then what can happen? And also share, this has worked before and it has worked in other environments, therefore it is possible for it to work here. So you might share something like, it would cost our economy $300 million if our children are not able to read. So while my child is just one of many, if more children experience poor literacy, then the impact on our city's economy will be a $300 million deficit. Obviously, I'm making this up. Another data point towards the point about how many people are affected. I know that my child is not the only one who is struggling with literacy, because there are 250 other students that are using the same curriculum and receiving the same poor literacy instruction. If we choose not to act on high quality literacy instruction, then the risk is that we have citizens who are not civically engaged because they can't read. I have seen other school districts, namely New York City, stop using ineffective literacy curriculum and they began using science-backed literacy curriculum. And the result has been that 50% of their students are now on grade level. We can do it too. So when you are considering your audience and you're standing in front of policymakers, for example, here are some proof points or data points that you might use to help sway your case. When you're talking to other parents, you might fall back and not want to overwhelm them with data or research. Your simple story may be sufficient to simplify the issue, to create a connection and cause them to care, and then issue your call to action. So let's wrap up with a few reminders. Okay. So your story involves change. How did you change through your situation? You want to make your listener care by explaining to them why what you are advocating for matters. Establish a connection by sharing why this is important to you, other details about what you experience so that you can establish that connection. And then finally, in the advocacy environment where you are issuing a call to action, ask them to do something. And that's part of your research and your preparation. I'm sure the team at AJE will help you determine what your call to action is. If you are in front of another group of parents, it might just be, hey, come to this meeting or participate in this research, or what's your story? Will you share your story for me? If you're in front of a policymaker, then it might be something a bit more complicated or policy related. What I want to leave you with is the confidence that you are an expert in your own experience. When you are sharing your personal testimony, there is 100% accuracy in what you are saying about what you experienced. And that can give you the confidence that you need, going back to mindset, to deliver your story with clarity and conviction. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you so much. You led such an amazing workshop today, and I really hope that most of us, if not all of us, felt inspired to start somewhere with our stories, and not necessarily having to be a large group of people or in front of the council, but a step forward to sharing what are those elements of a story. So thank you for joining us today. All right, you all. So next up, we will be talking about caregiver wellness, and Carol Joyner and Jenny. So, sorry, Jenny Saldana will be joining us. So we will be going ahead and just taking a 5-minute break, and you all can
Oh,
stay
wait.
with us.
But can we take the last poll questions for storytelling before we go on break?
Before we jump into that break. Right. We have
Maybe
one
we
last.
take the other one. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yes. Which part of testimony feels most challenging for you? Telling my story clearly, keeping it short and impactful, navigating government systems, managing emotions while speaking. And I've got this. I just need practice. So I have one person, 2 people for telling my story clearly, 1 for managing emotions, and 3 for feeling confident. They just need practice. Nice. Okay, we
Can
got
I
a
speak to that, telling my story clearly?
Yeah.
To that point, thank you so much. This worksheet that I shared with you is a tool that I use frequently when I have to, or when I have an opportunity to tell a story. So if you're not sure about if you're telling your story clearly, then outline it into short bullet points. So you can be sure that you are articulating what happened, why it mattered, the journey that you went on, the obstacles, and how the story came to a resolution. Following that simple story arc is a surefire way to tell a story very clearly. And then the more you practice, the more confident and compelling you will be when you tell that story. So just grab this handy worksheet, jot down your ideas, and that will help you to tell your story very clearly.
And also in the chat, some people shared if your presentation would be available. So we'll go ahead and upload that in our live binder so that they can have it.
Yes.
And if you haven't accessed the live binder, Chioma had sent the link in the group chat. All right. So let's take a 5-minute break. I'll put a timer on the screen and we'll be back shortly. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Before we get started, I would like to introduce Carol Joyner and Jenny Saldana. So Carol Joyner is the Executive Director of Family Values at Work Action, a network building power across 16 states for care, policies, and worker justice. Carol founded Family Values at Work Action while leading the labor and federal policy agenda for family values at work over a 13-year period. She is also the founding director of the 1199 SEIU Employer Child Care Fund and 1199 Child Care Corporation, negotiated by 1199 United Healthcare Workers, East and New York Healthcare Employers. Ms. Joyner is a founding member of the New York Union Child Care Coalition, Work Family Strategy Council, and Paid Leave for All. Other organizational affiliations include Labor Project for Working Families and the Family Values at Work Boards, member of the NCBCP, Black Women's Roundtable, and co-chair of the 22 Ward 4 Redistricting Committee, and Carol lives in Washington, D.C. We also have with us today,
But
Jenny.
we should also know that Miss Carol is Emil's mom. I just wanted to, so she's a mother, like all of us are on here. She's part of our community. Okay.
Yeah, I did want to drop
The
it in there.
best, the best.
Thank you.
And we also have with us Jenny Saldana. They are the DC Outreach Coordinator at First Shift Justice Project. Jenny Saldana is the DC Outreach Coordinator at First Shift Justice Project, a nonprofit that provides free legal services for pregnant people, working parents, and caregivers in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. FSJP offers legal services and information related to medical, caregiving, family job leave, and leave benefits, workplace pregnancy and family responsibility related discrimination, and workplace accommodations for pregnancy, breastfeeding, and domestic violence. Jenny provides Know Your Rights session presentations in both English and Spanish to pregnant people, caregivers, and parents on many of the aforementioned topics and is passionate about educating and surrounding community, giving them the tools to feel empowered and confident in advocating for themselves in the workplace. All right, so we're about to get started. I'm going to share the screen. Give me 1 second. All right, take it away, Carol.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I really appreciate it over the last couple of days, getting to know you all, to know that my amazing son, Amilka, is in good hands and doing really good work there. So thank you for the opportunity. And also just a nod to Rhonda, who provided the storytelling presentation. I saw the end of it, and I feel like that is a real extension of this conversation, or this is an extension of that conversation, because all of what folks just learned about storytelling, the importance of telling our stories and demonstrating change in our lives is really critical to building the care-centered society that we all need. Our stories are the data. We may not have the numbers, we may not be economists, but our stories are actually the data. So I really appreciate it being reminded of that. So I'll start with the next slide, just giving an overview of sort of where we are. I think this was already done, like we did the introductions. And so let's go to the very next slide. And we can kind of talk about some of the actions that folks can take in response to some of the things that Jennifer and I will talk about. And so Family Values at Work Action is the youngest organization. I stood it up during the pandemic in the middle of 2020 with all that was going on. But we are the sister organization to Family Values at Work, which has been around for 21 years. And essentially, both of these organizations, one has 27 state coalitions, ours has 16, is really about helping people in the United States to discover the importance of caregiving. And not just the importance of it, but getting our elected officials to fund caregiving and to build the political and a care economy infrastructure that we so desperately need. We have supported the passage of bills all over the country. In 14 states, there's paid family and medical leave, including DC. In 19 states, there's paid sick and safe days, including DC. In DC, we actually worked very closely. It was like a test case for some of us on staff to actually be in the midst of the campaign, not just passing the law, but helping to get it implemented. Our organizations across the country are multi-issue organizations. They work on a number of things like reproductive justice, climate and economic justice, voting rights, small business organizing, immigration reform, and increasingly, they are helping to be the resistance to some of the horrible policy changes we're seeing coming out of this administration. All of those organizations have one thing in common, though. They do center care. Someone's in the waiting room. They do center care in the work that they do. And they connect the dots between care and reproductive rights, because certainly if you are going to be forced to have children because of, the fact that our abortion rights have been stricken from us, if you're going to be forced to have children, you actually are going to have time off to care, right? So there's a direct connection. There's a direct connection, we know, with climate change now in care, that people are being, forced out of their jobs due to climate disasters, and oftentimes can't even take time off from work to bail their homes out or to address a tornado that has hit or anything like that. So these are really connecting intersectional issues. The other thing that we do is we work to bring the state voices, again, storytelling, to the federal fight for care and for economic justice, for voting rights, and more. Our goal is to build a care-centered society where no one has to worry about whether or not they can care for one another, whether or not they can take time off to actually have that baby and bond with that baby before they have to go back to work, or if someone's family member has cancer treatment. There was a very powerful young woman who, when we were passing paid family and medical leave in DC, was herself going through cancer treatment. And she didn't survive, and she didn't even live to see the law go into effect, but she did have to take time off during her lunch hour to go get chemotherapy, and then she would go back to work. No one should have to live like that. And so these are some of the examples we live with. We ask people to go on. If maybe I can put the petition in the chat, and we'd love for you to sign our petition to help bring the voices forth about building a care-centered society. Next slide. So this is where we've been, right? The headlines have been dizzying all day long. People are texting me or calling me, my loved ones, my friends, or we're in the house, right? Watching what happens when an administration gets into office that is trying to deconstruct the government, to deconstruct all that we've built over the last 150 years, right? And so here are some of the headlines. I don't have to read them to you. I'm sure you know about them. It started with the federal workers, and then came the attack on the education department, which the Supreme Court just held up. And then it was a constant attack on immigrant families. You see in the picture up here in the corner, that was a rally in DC addressing the fact that ICE is going after DC family members who actually are not criminals. They are here. They have the right to be here. They are waiting sort of their process in immigration court, and they're just being picked up and deported off of the streets. And so there's a lot going on. The capstone of it is, what just happened 2 weeks ago with HR 1. Some people call it the Big Beautiful Bill, or others call it the Big Betrayal Bill. Still others have other salty names for the bill that got passed on and signed into law on the 4th of July, that essentially shifts $4.5 trillion from our tax base to serve our families, to build and protect our safety net, to billionaires and corporations. So I know I looked on your agenda going forward. You're going to have a deep dive on what was in HR 1, also known as the bill BBB. And so this isn't going to be that, but I'm going to give you some highlights because it goes to how difficult it is for us to care for one another going forward. If we think that caregiving was hard before, I think it's going to get increasingly harder after the passage of this law. Next slide. So HR 1, transfer of taxes, $4.5 trillion. That's the number that Donald Trump talked about on the campaign trail last year, that I'm going to make sure that the tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017 not only gets restored, but it's even bigger and better for you, right? He was talking to billionaire donors. And so what you will see, without even you don't have to look closely, is that I'll let you read the safety net, how it's attacked our safety nets. The impact has been that 17 million people will probably be uninsured over the next 10 years. The bill has a 10-year lifespan because it was crafted and passed through reconciliation, which has a 10-year lifespan. However, so all of it gets rolled out and the impact happens over a long period of time. By the 10th year, clearly 17 million or more will be uninsured, meaning have no health insurance, have no ability to buy it, right? Older Americans will be forced to work for their health care because they're going to be required under certain circumstances to prove that they're working in order to get their Medicaid, or in some cases, in order to get other benefits. We expect, because so many rural hospitals are dependent on Medicaid, we expect to see significant closure of rural hospitals, especially in poorer states. And those happen to be states that are predominated by Republicans. And so I don't know, how that's going to work out for them. But I know that many people are going to get hurt as a result of living in rural communities and seeing their hospitals and their nursing homes close. We're looking at possibly 16 million children and 8 million adults being cut from SNAP. And so the single nutrition program that's been around for decades in the United States is the lifeblood for so many people in order to get food, to get the nutrition that they need. Schools rely on it to make sure that sometimes the after-school programs or the summer lunch programs, use SNAP funding. Older people are dependent on SNAP funding. It's just unbelievable that you would take the food, from the mouths of babes and people who are so dependent on it. What we're also looking at is that Medicaid enrollment that generally happens once a year is going to happen every 6 months. Now, it's hard enough we have organizations devoted to nothing but getting people to re-register for Medicaid. And now it's going to happen every 6 months. And so we know people are going to fall off of Medicaid as a result. And that's what they're counting on, to create greater and more complicated bureaucracy. And then the last thing I would say as a gesture toward climate change is that during the last administration, great climate change mitigation policies were passed. And one of them was around electric cars, right? If we can reduce the number of fossil fuel driven cars in our, putting fumes into our atmosphere, then we can actually begin to meet some of the climate change goals. Well, the reductions and the rebates on electric cars have been cut as a result of this particular bill, HR 1. So there was a tremendous attack here on the previous administration's entire agenda, and an attack on healthcare for most people in this country. And so that's what we're seeing. You can read here, I'm sure, what the numbers actually mean, but I really wanted to spell out the impact because it's going to be devastating. Next slide. And so for us, the impact in DC is already beginning to be felt, right? They're experiencing workforce decline, not just because of HR 1, but because the entire administration, because of the downsizing of government agencies, forcing people to leave the city because they don't have jobs anymore. We have a tremendous federal workforce here. And if you've been seeing more for sale signs, or people disappearing from your neighborhood who used to live there, or people having to get, reorganize their lives because of this, it's because when you cut that many people out of the federal government, you're going to see the experience on the streets, in the stores, in your community. Hence, an economic downturn will ensue as a result of the workforce decline, because it's people who keep our economy going in this city, the ability to buy homes, to pay rent, to purchase from the stores in our communities. All of that is going to have a tremendous impact on the city. We're going to see revenue decline as a result of that. And then I'll get to the last box, because we are literally living the fight in City Hall right now to make sure that all of these impacts that we're listing on this page don't result in significant budget cuts or attacks on our way of life in DC. And so the city council right now, I'm sure all of you know, and if you don't, you will, has been tremendously engaged in responding to the mayor's budget. And the mayor's budget is a direct response to the federal conditions, not just the budget cut, but the shifting of $1 billion from our budget, our taxes in DC to the federal government, and they haven't given it back. So that's happening. But it's also a response to what we expect will happen as a result of HR1. And I think the mayor is responding to potential budget cuts from the federal government down the road, particularly around healthcare. However, DC is not without resources, and we have opportunities and other ways that we have to look at how we fund the city. And so the city council just passed this week their first reading of the budget. So the mayor, of course, puts out her budget. The city council has two readings. The first reading was this week. As a result of the city council's reading, some of the cuts that we were really struggling and worried about are not going to go into effect. So they were planning to cut DC's paid family leave law, which Ginny is going to talk about in depth, which is an amazing law that helps, thousands of people in the district. And the city council put a hold on that. They were going to cut the increases that tip workers were expecting that we won through a ballot initiative called Initiative 82 in DC, right? And that has been stalled, thank God. And then they were also going to change or cut out the funding for ranked choice voting, which really is going to bring, and people believe it's going to bring more democracy to our elections. So they're very key things that were being cut from the budget, as well as a number of other things like childcare. I don't think you'll correct me, but I don't think education was on the chopping block, a number of things. The council has come in and they're going to have another reading at the end of the month. So who knows, certainly important to watch how these things will pan out. We're not 100% sure right now, but so far the council is leaning in to protect these policies. And so I can go to the next slide. I know I have to save some time for Ginny. Can someone tell me how I am on time? Maybe 5 more minutes, a few more minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so next slide. What I want to just go to the pay family, the one before. What I want to point out is, again, I can't say enough that the reason I talked about the attack on the federal government, how it's going to impact DC and all of that is because if we're talking about caregiving is intimately tied to having the infrastructure to make it happen, right? There's no world in which, well, there is. I mean, right now, someone said during the pandemic that, in some European countries, they were able to quarantine right away and they were able to take care of one another during the pandemic. And that in the United States, our system was basically women's backs. And without infrastructure for caregiving, without the laws, without the structures in place, that it is going to fall to the traditional caregivers in every society, which, is hugely problematic. So in this society, it's no joke that there is no standard in the United States for paid family and medical leave. There's no national standard. We've been able to pass some laws here and there, cobble some laws together, but they've always said, well, let the employers just decide whether or not they want to do paid family and medical leave. That's what we've been doing for years. And 24% of private sector employers offer paid family and medical leave. Only 24%. That means, 76% do not. And so while we've left it to employers to treat their employees well, it hasn't panned out well. And that's why for low wage earners, most people go back to work 2 weeks after giving birth. A quarter of the people go back 2 weeks after giving birth, right? And many people are left alone in their own recovery after they've had surgery or are dealing with a cancer treatment or of that sort. And, there is research that talks about how well you heal when you have a caregiver versus when you don't. So these are real critical issues for caregiving and healing. Currently, the federal bill It's not a law, it's still a bill. The Family and Medical Leave Act, also known as the Family Act, has been introduced each Congress for the last 15 years. And it hasn't passed yet, no matter who's in office, right? Democrat, Republican, it just hasn't happened. And we've been doing like a tremendous amount of work to make that happen. So we have a job to make sure that everyone has access to care, whether you welcome a new child, caring for yourself, or caring for a very sick family member, or addressing someone who has a military deployment. All of those are critical issues with regard to paid family and medical leave and reasons why people need care. Next slide. The other type of care that's really critical here is paid sick days. And DC was one of the first cities to pass paid sick days in the country. And essentially, it's that smaller number of days, not to be confused with paid family and medical leave, that's like 12 weeks or more. This is a couple of days. It shouldn't be an issue, right? Still, only 79% of employers offer any paid sick days. And the reason that percentage is so high is because it's a standard in union contracts and because most government jobs have paid sick days. And so that boosts it up, right, a little bit. But paid sick days are needed if your child calls home and the nurse calls school, right? And they say your child has a fever and they need to be picked up. You actually need to leave your job and go get them. And I'm not going to read all this because I know I'm running out of time, but just to leave you with the story that when we were trying to pass paid sick days in the state of Washington, nurses came and testified to the fact that children, school nurses, that children, when they come to their offices because they're sick, will literally start crying if their parents have to be called. Why? Because the parents don't have paid sick days. And unfortunately, a 7 or 8-year-old is very clear that if my parent has to leave their job suddenly, then guess what? They could lose their job. And so the child would rather, you know, do anything not to have the parent be called. Now, what kind of society are we living in where children would rather, just tough it out at school than go home and be cared for by their parents? So paid sick days in 19 states, including DC. DC has one of the strongest laws. And the only thing I would say is that, again, the Healthy Families Act is the national bill for paid sick days, and we have to fight, to get that passed. It's just way past time. We shouldn't be still worrying about this. We are the only countries in the world still trying to get these kind of policies on a federal level. Next slide. This is my last one. And I just want to say, again, thank you for having me. Knowing your rights, whether it's at the federal level or in DC, it's really important, particularly in this moment. It's particularly important to have your story ready to be told because you don't know if you're going to talk to maybe a reporter or a Congress member or a city council member, as was said earlier. And so knowing your rights and connecting your rights to the story that you're telling is really critical. DC has some of the strongest worker protections, and we have to keep fighting for them. Jennifer will walk through all of that. I just want to leave you with, that if you can share this information, a lot of people walk around thinking they have paid leave and they have paid sick days, and they don't discover they have paid leave until they don't have paid leave until they go into labor or something like that, right? The other thing that's really important to consider is whether, as DC residents, we should be engaging more deeply in these federal fights. I know in DC, you see the Capitol sitting there, it's right on Capitol Hill, but we don't go up there, we don't talk to them, we don't make ourselves known and seen. There are some organizations now, as a result of these attacks, that are beginning to do that. And so Free DC, Jobs for Justice, some of these organizations are really connecting the dots and realizing that our fates are tied to what those elected officials are doing from around the country. Also think about who isn't covered by these policies, who you can bring to this conversation because they lack paid leave, they lack paid sick days, and they would be more sort of like empowered if they're part of the fight to build it. And then finally, some reason I don't have the whole slide. Can you move it down? I don't know. Oh, and then finally, there's a number.
I don't believe so. I'm trying to see. It just goes to this slide.
Okay. All right. All right. So there you go. And then also how you can get more involved either through AJE or other groups to ensure that families have what they need to prosper. So on that note, I will drop our petition in the chat once Jennifer starts, and I want to turn it over to my colleague, Jennifer, to go more deeply into knowing your rights.
Thank you. Jenny, before you get started, I just wanted to get a gauge of the room, and thank you, Miss Carol, for taking the first portion of that, and really just so much insight into being more mindful that not many people are aware or know that others may not be receiving that. And honestly, that among different presidencies, how the Family Act is still trying to be passed and the work that is continuing there. So I appreciate the bundle of knowledge that you shared with us today. I'm going to share, we have 2 questions. So the first one is, how often do you feel like your own wellness needs are met while caring for your child or family? Amy. Amy just shared, should she request off from her job?
I know, I saw that. I just give her a smile. If you need
We have 3 people that said sometimes, 3 that said rarely, and 2 that said never. And that is very real with everything going on a day-to-day basis. Yes. Let me go ahead to the second question. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay. What kind of support would help you most as a caregiver advocate? Mental health support, financial or legal assistance, respite care, time off, peer-to-peer community, or policy training and action steps. I have 1 person, 2 people for mental health support, 2 for financial or legal assistance, and 1 for respite care. And also, everyone, thank you for the feedback, because as we continue brainstorming for more workshops and more panels to have, and next year when we launch the health policy camp again, this is really great feedback to have ideas of what different CBOs, organizations can we reach out to provide that training for us and just have us in those community spaces and gaining advocacy. All right. Well, Jenny, I'm going to pass it along to you. Would you like me to share the slides as well? And then you can talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. But yes, hi everyone. I'm here to as was mentioned, talk more in depth about knowing your rights. As it was said in my bio, what I do in my job is to just do KYRs, basically. And I feel really lucky that that is what I get to do all the time in my position, because I think, especially in a moment like right now, understanding what your rights are is very, very important. Of course, there are a lot of challenges, and it can be really nerve-wracking, actually, to advocate for yourself with this knowledge. Collectively, I think it allows us to care for one another, to know, is my employer saying what is actually legal, and what recourse is there for me as a pregnant worker, as a parent who works full time, or someone who's caregiving for a family member, for example. So you can go to the next slide. So yeah, just a little bit about the organization I'm with, which is First Shift Justice Project. I know just from that poll y'all did, folks mentioned legal services or legal resources, which is exactly what we do. We provide folks with information, but also legal services based on things like your right to medical leave, paid sick leave, pregnancy accommodations, and things related to that. And our services are free to workers in the DMV. And so one thing I'll note about jurisdiction, that workplace rights depend on where you work rather than where you live. So in a place like the DMV, this is obviously really important because so many folks are pretty transient, maybe live out in Maryland, work in DC, and vice versa. So sometimes that can change. But for the purposes of today, I'll be focusing mostly on DC. Next slide. Yeah. So before I get into talking about rights, I feel like we have a lot to learn from each other. So I wanted to start off with a little bit of a scenario. And this is based off of a real client we had. Of course, some details changed. So I'll just read this and then have a few questions for everybody. So Mara works as a janitor at a university. She shared her pregnancy with her manager and requested that she be given reasonable accommodations, including a reduction in the number of study rooms and lecture halls she had to clean. Despite her request, the manager continued to assign her additional rooms above the daily standards and claimed he would review the accommodations requested by her doctor, but never followed up. Eventually, the manager fired her. So my two questions, one is if you've ever experienced something similar to this, and two, and you're welcome to answer both or either or, what would you do in this situation? And you're welcome to put it in the chat or come off of mute.
Yes, I would love to hear some people share. Okay.
And it might take folks a second to think about it, so no rush.
Mm.
Okay. File a complaint. Sorry. I'm gonna plug my computer in. Yeah, so I saw someone name, filing a complaint with the Office of Human Rights or the EEOC, which absolutely would definitely be an option. I'll give
I
it.
see that Fari shared an update as well in the chat.
Oh yes, I did see a report about that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, so once again, this is just sort of a scenario of, things that we sometimes see as an organization, stories that I've like heard from people that I, talk to when I'm out doing outreach. So, okay, you would never disclose a pregnancy. That is very valid. And yeah, I totally understand. But you can move to the next slide. I'll speak on that a little more as we go. But so just to sort of start us off, all workers in DC are protected from discrimination based on pregnancy, which is why you could go and talk to the Office of Human Rights or the EEOC. But of course, it does happen. Clearly, we as an org would not exist if that wasn't the case. And so what that could look like is being terminated from your job, having your hours or your pay reduced, having what we call an undesirable transfer, which is being placed into a new role, probably after you've disclosed your pregnancy and you didn't request to be changed, or undue scrutiny, which is just a very fancy legal term for saying criticism. So what I always tell folks is like, once again, maybe after you've disclosed this, you realize your employer is starting to say things that they've just never really said to you and give critiques that feel out of place. And we always say to be aware of benign discrimination, which kind of relates to like that critique and undesirable transfers, in that ultimately any sort of request for accommodations should come from you. Your employer should not push really anything onto you. You are the person who gets to decide, what you need. So even if it seems well-intentioned, maybe they're saying, go ahead, take that time off. Once again, they cannot force you to take on an accommodation you didn't ask for, or to take leave before you want to. And I see Ebony put a very detailed response, so I'll take a second to read this. So I would have properly documented each communication, then I'd file a complaint with HR after thoroughly researching. I would also send an email to all staff who hold any power of the changes I request, including, HR and the union if I was in one. And I'd raise hell like no other professional. No other professional. And communicate with me. My doctor, if there's any documentation I could be given to advocate on behalf of my work environment. They will remember my voice, that's for sure. I love this response. And well, yes, a lot of this will come back up. So this was great. Thank you so much, Ebony. Next slide. So pregnancy accommodations, what can those be? Really any type of temporary or reasonable modification. So that could be having extra or longer breaks, having a lifting restriction, having access to a chair. I just recently did a presentation for somebody who was like, oh yeah, I worked at like the reception of some building and they didn't give me a chair when I needed one while being pregnant. And they refused to like give me that. So things like that can happen. Sometimes people are like, wow, really? There are workplaces that allow that? And absolutely. So being aware of even these small things is really important. And the next slide, which talks about breastfeeding and pumping. And so one thing I was going to add with the pregnancy accommodations is those are things you can also ask for while you're in postpartum. But yes, with breastfeeding and pumping, some of the important things to keep in mind is the space that they provide you should be sanitary and not a space where people are coming in and out of constantly. So there should be a level of privacy, and it cannot be a bathroom. Sometimes that time can be considered unpaid, but as I always explain to people, this is something that should really apply to folks equally. So if your employer doesn't ask other people to clock out for things like a smoke break or to take a personal call, they should not ask you to, clock out or take that time unpaid for breastfeeding or pumping. And next slide. So yeah, with job protection in DC, Carol kind of mentioned a bit about FMLA already. And so just to kind of explain a bit more specifics about these, there's of course the federal version and then the DC version. And some of you might be familiar with, how FMLA works already. So hopefully this isn't too repetitive. But the main thing to know between the federal and DC version is that the federal version of FMLA is 12 weeks of unpaid leave within a 1-year period. And of course, the purpose of FMLA is so that you have time to bond with a new child, take care of your own needs, or to take care of a family member. And then the DC version is 16 weeks of unpaid leave to bond with a new child. And then you have another 16 weeks to care for your own needs or to take care of a family member. So you technically have like a pool of 13 weeks, which is a really nice benefit to DC that's a bit more extended. And you also have 2 years to make use of that, which, things happen, of course. And so I think having like that extra time is a really great thing that DC families can take advantage of. And then next slide, Daniela. Just one thing to note is you can use FMLA to kind of create a reduced work schedule. You can use it all at once, or you can use it intermittently, which basically is you take 3 weeks, you go back to work, and then you take another 3 weeks, for example. You generally cannot combine these two, so you would pick one or the other depending on what you might have access to. Those things can change. And yes, I see Amy's point about FMLA protects your job, which is something I always like to emphasize for people that, job protection means when you take that time off, when you come back, you typically will have the same role or a similar role. Next slide. And then lastly, I, always like to bring up Protecting Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which is just a law that we have in DC that ensures that pregnant and postpartum workers still have access to unpaid job protected time off as a pregnancy accommodation. You can move to the next slide. The reason why this is really important is because with FMLA, both the federal and DC version, you do have to have worked at least a year, have a certain number of hours, and your workplace has to be a certain size. And so sometimes pregnant and postpartum workers in DC obviously haven't quite yet met those requirements. So this law just ensures that you would still have access to that job protected time off, regardless of the size of your employer. Next slide. And so, once again, Carol kind of spoke to the current moment and the current climate that we're in. And so I think, now more than ever, the idea of unpaid time off is really difficult for people. And so in DC, we have the DC Paid Family Leave program, which is a monetary benefit. And sometimes most people, and I think all people should be able to have access to both. So next slide. You can go back. And so just a bit about what that program is. Once again, I'm sure some of you are already familiar with this. There's 4 categories, which is family, medical, parental, and prenatal. With the exception of prenatal, all of these are 12 weeks of paid benefits. And prenatal would be 2 weeks for you to receive prenatal care. And next slide. DCPFL currently provides up to 90% income replacement while you are on job protected leave. The amount that you would receive, typically depends on what your salary is. I know that the DCPFL website has a calculator you could make use of if you want like an estimate. And currently the maximum is $1,153 per week. And I always emphasize that any primary caregiver can give these benefits. Sometimes people think it's just, just a person who's pregnant, maybe just mom, but of course, dad, and anybody in a household who considers themselves to be a primary caregiver, because of course you could use this for family leave or for yourself, if you are experiencing a serious health condition. And then next slide. So I have another scenario that I'll just read out for folks. Julia has a child with a serious illness. Her child has many medical appointments and Julia works, so the balance is difficult. Although she has a partner who helps care for her child, she wants to take DC family and medical leave so she can focus on her child's health. When Julia talks to her employer about FMLA, they don't give much information about her rights or information about paid family leave. They also do not explain what next steps she should take. Julia feels that the only option is to quit her job. So once again, this is something you feel like you have experienced in some way, maybe not exactly, but relate to some parts of it. And what might you do in this situation, or what advice might you offer? I'll give folks 2 minutes to think on it and respond.
And I think it's so daunting, especially in these times, that people really should know their rights, but especially if employers don't want to share that knowledge with them. And it's just like you're gatekeeping knowledge for, if the government can't add benefits to us, at least from community-based, we can add benefits to our own lives and just sharing that knowledge. But for her, in this scenario, the thing to quit her job is just so many things stressing.
Yeah, I see one suggestion, sometimes changing supervisors, maybe you'll have better results. That's a good point, right? Maybe changing who you're speaking to and the chain of command, which I know was named earlier.
Well, the thing that I always suggest to people is to call first shift justice if they have this trouble. I've sent many people your way.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a suggestion I will come back to at the end of this. But yeah, one thing I wanted to name with this scenario in particular is um, this kind of last sentence of Julia feels that her only option is to quit her job. And that is a situation in which I find a lot of people, after I get through my slides, they're just like, yeah, I think I actually experienced this, but I ultimately chose to just quit. Or I think I'm not going to go back, once my leave is over. And that is, the point of these conversations, I think, is to help people feel more empowered, and to know that there are orgs that are out there and ready to, back you up, to help advocate with you, in the situation that you feel you're being discriminated against. Because when you have those resources, there's definitely ways, right, to get what you need without having to quit your job or leave. So job search during the leave, that is you're right. So yeah, just to kind of wrap this part up, some practical tips for the workplace that we typically suggest for folks, which I can tell folks are pretty knowledgeable here, but just being informed about what your workplace policies are already. Of course, every place is different. I know this was sort of like mentioned, I think, when Carol was speaking, but depending on the type of work you have, you might actually, have access to paid sick leave, understanding how that accrues, knowing, at what point are you allowed to use your FMLA, things like that. Plan ahead for leave and returning to work. So knowing what your timeline is really vital. Document communications about leave and accommodations in writing whenever possible, which Ebony's response from earlier is exactly what I was thinking about. uh, in terms of, yes, absolutely, you should document things that have been said to you. I tell people to take screenshots, request things in writing when you can, just because it's important for you to have that paper trail. And if you come to us, the lawyers would love for you to, have something that's sort of, here's what they told me, here are the justifications they tried to give me. Um, paying attention to how other people might be treated is a way that we can sometimes assess I feel like I'm being discriminated against, reporting discrimination and denial of leave or accommodations through available channels, which once again, I know folks sort of named of, taking this to people higher up, and just, right, communicating to as many people as possible about what's happening. And then lastly, don't quit. But of course, I know that there can be other circumstances or maybe something that you've just decided for yourself. And of course, that is, we respect folks, agencies. And so next slide. With that, we as an org are here to support people. And so this is our intake information. You can always give us a call. The way our intake works is someone will get back to you within 72 hours. They'll do like a brief intake and then schedule you to talk one-on-one with a lawyer who could then talk with you in more detail about what's going on and then how can they support you. They, are happy to, do things on your behalf, but of course, folks, they want to respect what you would want in that situation. So if you don't feel comfortable with a lawyer, maybe contacting your employer, what else could they do to help you? So yeah, that's the kind of KYR part to this. And then the last bit, which, Carol did a great job of, I think, explaining on the federal level and a bit on in DC. I did want to just like offer, more framing for what's happening in the city. From what I can tell in the chat, people are pretty informed. So some of this is definitely like a bit repetitive, but just I think it's important to know of what's going on with the budget. So as it was already named, the DC Paid Family Leave Act was technically in the proposed budget had some cuts made to it. For example, cutting down the number of weeks people had for things like personal medical leave and family caregiving leave. And there were proposed cuts to the weekly amounts. And this was ultimately restored after the reading and voting that happened on Monday. So thankfully, the council, which, no people named the council, has definitely been like listening to people. And a lot of these efforts, I know the people who are going and talking to council members. So is definitely, I think, through the effort of folks who are committed to making sure that these things that were originally cut find their way back to being funded and restored. And yeah, I know people have named a little bit around, attacks against our immigrant community. So in the proposed budget as well, the Sanctuary Values Act had been uh, technically overturned, but once again, a lot of community advocates recognized that this was kind of snuck in there, and were able to successfully advocate for that to be restored as well. And the Sanctuary Values Act is essentially what makes it so that the Department of Corrections cannot collaborate with immigrant enforcement agencies like ICE. And so if you're watching the news, you might see in other cities that local police might collaborate with ICE officials. And so in DC, that is not legal, and we want to keep it that way, of course, to protect our immigrant communities. And then this is the last little, the next slide is the last update. Just some other things I think are important to keep in mind. Mayor Bassard also introduced the Rental Act as a way to rebalance affordable housing, but there were a lot of local organizations like legal orgs, housing orgs that raised a lot of concerns that there were, threats to just tenant rights in general. And so currently the DC Council decided to remove it from the budget so that it could be considered on its own. So I know it was named that on July 28th, there will be the second round. And so this will be one of the things that they will be discussing on that day. So, I think in this conversation around care and taking care of our health, of course, having access to affordable housing is super, super important. And then, yeah, lastly, the DC Healthcare Alliance program, once again, lots of cuts, including phasing out coverage for adults who are over 21, and reducing income eligibility and introducing more strict requirements, such as like having to go in person to get recertified. And so they did, I believe, remove that in-person recertification, but the funding hasn't been fully restored. And so this is another like local fight that people are, trying to organize around. And, I think DC is a city full of people who deeply, care about their communities. And I think it's important for all of us to continue being aware of what's happening in council, and just doing what we can to ensure that the council members know what we want. And, I know this is a very well-educated group of people who have that energy. So I find it really phenomenal that you all are, going through this health policy camp and gaining lots of new skills to be advocates. So that's my presentation. I know I went over 8 p.m., but it was really great to be here and speak with you all.
No, thank you, Jenny and Carol. Again, once again, no worries about going over time because you all shared so much, an abundance of knowledge with us. And I also think you did a really great job at giving such a nice detailed background to HR1, where people who are joining this space, and this will be uploaded on the AJA YouTube, by the way, you all. So even people who are joining this space and may not be much familiar with how advocacy and policy works, they're getting a real background to it. So thank you. We will be going into the question and answer portion. So if you all have any questions, we want to dedicate a little bit of time to that at this moment. Feel free to come off mute. And also, this was a really nice background as well. I just want to make a plug because on Tuesday we will be discussing HR1, so the quote unquote big beautiful bill in more detail, and we will be having some panelists specifically discussing Medicaid and also on the Alliance. So thank you, Jenny, for also touching on that update.
Daniela, I would be remiss if I didn't lift up that we're going to be joining the vigil. There's a 60-hour vigil on 7/24, so next Thursday, at the Senate on Capitol Hill outside. And the vigil is essentially gonna just tell people stories. We want everyone to come. Family Values at Work has taken the block of time. They're gonna be there for 60 hours. We have on the 24th from 2 to 5 p.m. And we would love any of you guys to join us in sharing your stories. And if you don't feel comfortable, we'll have stories you can just read and put out there, because the attack on our, our policies and our resources is just so great. And then they're gonna end the vigil for Saturday, on Saturday the 26th, where there's gonna be a big rally on Capitol Hill. So if folks wanna come to that. It's also about families first and making sure that this government knows that no matter what they're doing, we're centering families first and the care that they need. I'll send you the some detail about that, and maybe folks will join us. We'd love to
Yes.
have you with the Family Values at Work group during our 2-hour block.
And Carol, if there's a flyer, we can definitely upload it along with our materials on the binder so that more people who may not have been present in the meeting are still able to join if they have the time.
Perfect.
Thank you. All right. Well, if there are not any questions,
Daniela, I have one question, Daniela.
go
I
ahead.
think you got 26 in the chat. Did Miss Carol say the 24th?
She said both dates.
Yep, July 24th is
Oh, 60 hours. Got you.
yeah.
Got it.
So
I
it's
got
over
it. Got it.
60 hours, but hours part of it is for 2 hours on the 24th. But when I
Gotcha.
put,
Okay.
I'm nervous about putting it in the chat because I want y'all to come to hours. And that's for 2 hours. So what I'll do is I can put just the whole flyer so you'll have a background about the vigil, and then just stress that just reach out to me, Daniela can, or Milka can connect with me so that folks can join us on the Hill. Let me see if I can, I'll put it in the chat before we're done.
Thank you. All right.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Fari, for your question. Any other questions? Right. If not, I'll pass it over to Chioma. She's going to be going ahead and giving the closing remarks.
Well, thank you all again for joining us today. This was so informative, so many layers, a little triggering, having been through almost all of the scenarios. They hit home for me. I don't know about the rest of you, but I hope that we're more inspired and that we deal with our triggers. I hope we do well activities for ourselves and our families. A lot of what's happening in our world now is heavy, but I'm so grateful that we're spending this time together, because planning, strategizing, and working collaboratively is, I think, what's going to save the day. And so I look forward to you all joining us for tomorrow. Thank you, Carol, for putting the link in the chat. We will see if we can coordinate something amongst ourselves and come as a group. And if not this opportunity, definitely others. So please keep us in the loop. We are here, we're growing. I will say that we please fill out your evaluation forms. Danny, I don't know if you can please drop the link in the chat.
Will do.
We also have our we have 2 evaluation forms just because we're tracking these in different ways. So if you could please indulge us with completing both. I would even say, I know we're already on late, but if we can stay on 5 more minutes and just do some music and fill out the evals together, I would greatly appreciate that. And let me find the other link and we'll post that in the chat for you guys in a second. And Danny, if you post the other one, the form assembly, I will find, there it is.
Yeah, I posted the TFA one.
Okay, and so I'm posting eval number 2 in the chat.